Thank you very much, Isabella. It's a great honor for me to be back at the school offering a talk. I hope you find this of value. The talk is entitled The Spiritual Path Penetrating the Veil of Illusion. The soul or higher self serves as the mechanism of our divine essence, what Theosophy refers to as the monad. Although it is formless, the soul is commonly symbolized as a lotus-like structure. As a means of unfolding its symbolic petals of knowledge, love, and sacrifice, the soul, via its instrument, the personality, becomes immersed in the circumstances of the material world. Indian teachings refer to this immersion as the pravriti marga, or path of desire. The factor of desire enables the soul to experience all that life in form has to offer, as it undergoes many incarnations in the various races and cultures of our world. Eventually, the higher self reaches a saturation point in terms of acquiring experience within the realm of matter. The personality then experiences what we refer to as divine unrest, when the transitory affairs of everyday life no longer satisfy nor sustain one. This is when the spiritual path, what the Hindus call Nivriti Marga, the path of renunciation, beckons. In this presentation, I'm going to outline the underlying mechanics of the spiritual path, to seek to offer insight into how we may penetrate the veil of illusion, so aptly described by the Hindus as Maya, where the one life appears to us as many separate and distinct lives, and the affairs of this transient world as real and enduring. On this basis, we may remove the symbolic shackles found in Plato's cave as we turn away from the phantom apparitions on the wall, treading upwards out of the cave, beyond the veil of illusion, to confront the sunlight of our spiritual essence. In the proem to The Secret Doctrine, HPB describes the transcendent principle, which Petra described as Parabrahm, as the one life, eternal, invisible, yet omnipresent, without beginning or end, yet periodical in its regular manifestations. Now, an aspect of Parabrahm, the Hindu Brahman, pours out its energies into the field of space and time. The Hindus symbolize this by the penetration of the yoni by the lingam. This is where the active and passive powers of a single transcendent principle, which are essentially as one, appear as two. This is what is referred to as the hieros gamos, or sacred marriage, which creates and sustains our very universe. And when we tread the spiritual path, in accordance with the esoteric axiom on the emerald tablet of Hermes Trismegistus, as above, so below, we seek to effect this self-same sacred marriage, or hieros gamos, in microcosm. The Chinese alchemists sought to obtain the elixir of immortality. On this basis, they could reverse the original process of the one dividing into two, as depicted by the Tao, the yin and yang, and bring about their reunification. The yoni is a symbol of the archetypal goddess. By this, I'm referring to everything beneath the transcendent first cause. Another depiction of the goddess is illustrated here. We see the Hindu god Vishnu reclining on the waters of space, and from his navel there is a protruding lotus as a symbol of the goddess. And from this lotus, the creator god Brahma emerges. This very accurately describes what in Theosophy we refer to as the first outpouring, Brahma fashioning the substance of the various planes of creation. This is the activity of the third ray of active intelligence. It is the second ray energies, symbolized by Vishnu, which then causes this substance to cohere, so various forms can serve as divine expedients. And at the end of the entire manvantaric process, the first ray Shiva energy then abstracts everything back to the source. So the goddess factor can be found in all levels of existence beneath the first cause. Why am I saying this? Because it is within the realm of the archetypal goddess that the monad undertakes its long evolutionary journey, seeking to acquire what the wisdom teachings refer to as spiritual staying power. This refers to our ability to radiate and express our innate spiritual qualities regardless of the circumstances which confront us in life. Here is an image of the renowned anthropologist and mythographer Joseph Campbell. He stated that the goddess figures in myth are a representation of deity and manifestation, and that the goddess, the archetypal goddess, symbolizes all that can be known. She holds the keys to the secrets of life which lay beyond her veil of illusion. And when we tread the spiritual path, we should be aware that the goddess guards those secrets very jealously. It is only when we demonstrate sufficient worthiness, when we can overcome our powers of Maya, penetrate the veil which she casts over creation, that these secrets will be revealed to us. So, in summary, it's the objective of each and every monad to unfold its hitherto latent qualities within the realm of the goddess, to realize these. The Hindus describe these as Sat, Chit and Ananda, ultimate being, pure consciousness and bliss. And we undertake this long evolutionary journey as a part of realizing these, and in the process gaining spiritual staying power. So when we consider the God and goddess in embrace, we are considering how life is being generated in its profound mystery. In the Greek myths, the supreme Olympian, the monad, is Zeus, and his consort is Hera. Probably the greatest of the Greek heroes is Heracles, meaning Hera's glory, the glory of the goddess. Hera symbolizing here various energies and processes of deity manifest, equating with an aspect of the Shakti of the Eastern teachings. Now, Hera provides many, many challenges to Heracles. She places obstacles in the way, she goads him, cajoles him, at times mocks him. But these represent the trials which we encounter as we tread the spiritual path. And it is through these that we are able to acquire spiritual staying power. Heracles mounts a funeral pyre, then ascends to Mount Olympus, the realm of the gods. And that is effectively what we are seeking to do here. In tarot symbolism, the realm of transcendence, beyond the boundaries of manifestation, is located behind the veil of the High Priestess card, which we see here. The High Priestess represents the pure essence of consciousness. She is the source of the vibratory patterns which underlie creation. Her virgin milk sustains everything within that creation. Interestingly, in the Heracles myth, as an infant, he suckles on the breast of Hera, and this milk confers supernatural powers upon him, which later enable him to fulfill his quest within the realm of the goddess. When we assign the High Priestess card to the Kabbalistic tree of life, we see it here between Tifereth and Kether. In simple terms, higher self and monad. this pathway, the veil of the high priestess. Now, the Hebrews assign letters to each of the paths on the tree of life, and the letter which they assign to this pathway is Gimel, meaning camel. And of course, in the Middle East, the camel serves as a vehicle by means of which one may cross the desert, a very difficult and dangerous passage in the baking heat, the various mirages which may appear. This is a wonderful symbol of moving from everyday life to transcendence. It equates with the Hindu or Eastern concept, I should say, of the yana or ferry boat, which takes one from the shore of everyday life to that of transcendence. This high priestess card also equates to what HPB referred to as the veil of Isis. And to elevate our consciousness beyond the veil, we undertake the tried and tested disciplines of the spiritual path. And when we tread the path, like a Grail knight entering the forest adventurous, we are going to be tested. The higher self will test us in many ways to ascertain our worthiness as its instrument of expression. It will seek to dispense with karma at a much more rapid rate. And we must possess the necessary psychological integration to cope with the forces of the unconscious, which will inevitably confront us. Our existing personality, with its attitudes, predispositions, complexes, attachments, and desires, must effectively be deconstructed and reassembled at a higher point of consciousness, with all that is irrelevant to our spiritual progression being discarded. The soul may then safely and successfully infuse us with its energies so that we then function in conscious cooperation with the higher self. This is reflected in the alchemical motto, solve et coagula. Solve relates to the breaking down of components, and coagula relates to their reconstitution in a more purified form, whereby the philosopher's stone, the awakened higher self, may then be located, and the base metal of the transient personality undergoes a metamorphosis into the shining, radiant gold of the soul or higher self. And of course, this transformative process is very challenging. In the Bhagavad Gita, the battlefield of Kurukshetra symbolizes the confrontation between our higher spiritual nature, which is represented by the good and righteous Pandavas, and our lower desire-driven instinctual nature, represented by the self-serving Kauravas. And the protagonist, Arjuna, the Pandava, he is initially terrified at the prospect of confronting teachers, friends, and relatives amidst the ranks of the enemy. And similarly, when we tread the path, there are aspects of our psyche which require removal or transmutation if we are to successfully effect the process of spiritual transformation, even though we may hold these things very dear. It is the charioteer, Krishna, an incarnation of Vishnu, who offers Arjuna advice as to how to proceed. There is a famous address in chapter 2, verse 47, which I'm going to summarize: to act without the regards for the fruits of one's actions, to avoid identification with action, and to dedicate one's actions to Brahman, the eternal aspect of one's being, or in simple terms, to function as an instrument of the soul, not as a self-serving personality. Of course, in Theosophy, we are advised to study the classical teachings, to meditate, and to render service to humanity and the planet in general. On this basis, we construct the Antakarana, or rainbow bridge, linking personality to the soul, symbolized here in the famous painting of Jacob's Ladder by William Blake. Now, Theosophy describes the spiritual path and the process of initiation as a mountainous ascent. And if we are going to scale the symbolic cliff face, compacting the lessons and learning experiences of many lives into a short few, then we are going to be challenged, very much so. However, magnificent vistas will open up to us as we ascend the symbolic cliff face. Importantly, as we take each step towards the higher self, it responds, it will take steps towards us. It's a two-way process. And we are challenged amidst the realms of Maya to utilize and express the soul's qualities of Atma, Buddhi, and Manas, to do this in our daily lives. We must express Atma, or divine persistent will, the ability to persist ascending the cliff face of the mountain when all around us is crumbling. However, this enables us to look down at the various storms in the valley of our personality life, which Wayne was referring to, and to see these within their proper context. We must be aware that we are basically seeds which the monad has implanted into physical substance as a means of unfolding the lotus of the soul. And when we are treading the path, our energies go up towards the buds, so symbolic bud, I should say, so that will affect a full spiritual flowering. We must be able to persist. There is a very famous line in the Christmas carol, Good King Wenceslas, based on the Bohemian king Wenceslav. Wenceslas and the page witness a poor man out in the blizzard, and they go out to serve him. The page finds this very difficult. There are the famous lines, "Sire, the night is darker now, and the storm grows colder. Fails my heart, I know not how, I can go no longer." And the king replies, "Mark my steps, be brave thy page, tread thou in them boldly, then thou find the winter's rage, freeze thy blood less coldly." And when we tread the path, we are following in the footsteps of those who have gone before us, including the great ones behind the founding of our organization. And in accordance with Sheldrake's theory of morphic resonance, when we align ourselves to the hero archetype, we not only access the heroic qualities of those who have gone before us, but we also donate further energies to this, which will assist those who follow in our footsteps. Now, the various hero myths throughout our world are coloured and conditioned in accordance with the collective psyche and the prevailing culture of the geographical area from which they have arisen at that point in time. Regardless of the different characters and scenarios in these myths, they may all be held to represent both the challenges and the rewards of the spiritual path. And the Nivriti Marga, or path of return, is symbolized in the Odyssey by the protagonist Odysseus seeking to return to his point of origin, Ithaca, to reunite with his father and with his wife Penelope. The father Laertes, symbol of the monad. Penelope and Odysseus, the hieros gamos, or sacred marriage. The divine unrest here is symbolized by Odysseus' sickening of the violence of the Trojan War, and he wants to return home. Now, there is the famous episode in the Odyssey where Odysseus and his ships are subjected to fierce winds and violent storms, which drive them onto the Libyan promontory where the lotus eaters reside. The lotus eaters offer their fruit to the crewmen, but not Odysseus, who resists the temptation. And the crewmen then lose sight of their journey. The fruit is pleasant. It basically casts a spell of Maya over them, and they forget about why they are sailing on the waters of the unconscious to return to Ithaca. Interestingly, my rising sign in astrology is Libra. And there are certain aphorisms we have for each of the rising signs. This one is applicable for all. We say, make of your life a long open road so that the soul, as the driver of the car of the personality, can proceed swiftly to its destination. If anyone's aware of the Libra glyph, it's shaped like a car. But it's also shaped like a lay-by or cul-de-sac, and one should avoid resting in cul-de-sacs when they are treading the path. And the land of the lotus eaters is an effective cul-de-sac here. Considering the symbolism, I would also consider the fruit and the spell it casts to relate to the imbibing and the subsequent effects of hallucinogenic, psychoactive substances. The lure and seduction of these shortcuts can deflect the neophyte from connecting with the soul and realizing its intent. There is no doubt, of course, that psychedelic experience has served to inspire people towards then undertaking the tried and tested disciplines of the path. Ancient shamanic cultures used hallucinogenics. They were used in the Eleusinian mysteries. However, in my effect, if anyone is going to be lotus eating for any great amount of time, it is a very dangerous and very foolhardy endeavor. As I said to the group this morning, the higher self is molding us like a potter would mold clay on a wheel. And when the urn is finished, it is placed in a kiln to be fired. Similarly, we are placed on the burning ground of initiation and subjected to spiritual fire. And therefore, our various vehicles must be able to withstand this. The taking of psychoactive drugs not only affects the central nervous system, but its etheric, subtle counterpart, it affects the chakras. And on the basis of my understanding of metaphysics, I believe that the process of correction would occur, perhaps later in this life or in subsequent ones, in the form of neuropsychological disorders. Odysseus himself resists the temptation, and he forcibly removes the crew back down to the ships. Atma, divine persistent will, directing the psyche and its various components to proceed on the evolutionary journey. Later, Odysseus must pass the island of the Sirens, whose beautiful and enchanting voices cause sailors to shipwreck on the rocks of their island. The Sirens may be held to symbolize Maya in its various guises, and also the seductive powers of the astral plane in particular, in its illusory energies, and the expression of various forms of lower psychism which enable us to contact these and experience these. Now, looking at the symbolism here of how Odysseus overcame the siren song, he asked the crew to bind him to the mast at the center of his ship, the center of his being, and the crew, who may be held to symbolize the five senses, he stuffed their ears with beeswax so that they were deaf to the song of the sirens, and then the whole experience was successfully negotiated. Now, the stuffing of the crew, their ears rather, with beeswax, to me suggests a pratyahara stage of meditation, this being the fifth stage of the 8 limbs of the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. This is where one effects a withdrawal of the senses as a prelude to the 6th stage of dharana, where there is a focusing on a particular object, mantra, deity or chakra. The 7th stage then is dhyana, where the uninterrupted flow of concentration leads to the individual in one's object of concentration becoming as one, and the extremely advanced stage of samadhi is the last one, enabling one to render the veil, to experience a non-dual state of consciousness. rendering one completely aware of the present moment in a state of omniscience, omnipotence, timelessness, and unity with all life. The beeswax is an interesting symbol here. This is a symbol of purification, and it also relates to the spiritual planes of consciousness. Bees were sacred to the Druids. The Druids considered bees to be divine messengers. They used honey to produce their sacred drink, mead, which they employed in their various rituals. Indeed, bees were generally revered in ancient civilizations due to their ability to pollinate crops and flowers, thereby increasing the fruits of the goddess in terms of earthly abundance. It is worth noting that the Olympian gods feasted on ambrosia derived from honey, and bees were connected to the inspirational muses of Apollo. I'll touch on these a bit later, but they are basically a personification of the planes of consciousness upon which the soul resides, Atma, Buddhi, and Manas. Also with the siren experience of Odysseus, he is bound to the mast. The Jungian analyst Edward Edinger states in this respect, the image has many echoes. Even in medieval times, Odysseus lashed to the mast was compared to Christ on the cross. The alchemical image of the mercurial serpent nailed or transfixed to a tree relates to the operation of coagulatio in alchemy, which I mentioned earlier, where the reconstituted personality is then subjected, infused by the energies of the higher self, the planes of Atma, Buddhi, and Manas. When treading the path, seeking to pierce the veil of illusion, we must also express the quality of Buddhi. Love wisely applied, wisdom lovingly applied, we say. All the heart chakra qualities, inclusiveness, unconditional love, compassion, empathy, courage, and discrimination, the Hindu viveka, the capacity to discriminate between what is genuinely spiritual and what is transient, between the real and the unreal. And then there is higher manas, or abstract thought, the capacity to think about matters divorced from our survival needs or the fulfillment of our various desires. Of course, we develop abstract thought through studying the wisdom teachings, and we enhance it particularly through studying the symbolism of myth or the imagery associated with dreams and meditation. And what I have been attempting to do for part of this lecture is give you an example of abstract thought in terms of interpreting these myths. Now, Maya can take on various guises as the goddess casts a veil of illusion over creation. In modern society, certainly Western, it takes a form of materialism and various factors which invoke and excite our desire nature. Of course, this is our purpose to transcend these. I'm going to read out a quote, a condensed one from the Vishnu Purana, which I think is very relevant to us today and the society within which we reside. When society reaches a stage where property confers rank, wealth becomes the only source of virtue, passion the sole bond of union between husband and wife, falsehood the source of success in life, sex the only means of enjoyment, and when outer trappings are confused with inner religion. But of course, being thrust into this particular society gives us a wonderful opportunity to demonstrate spiritual staying power. If we can do it amidst such a thick fog of Maya, then we can do it anywhere. And of course, meditation and contemplation is so important as we seek to ultimately penetrate the veil of illusion. In his penultimate labor, the Greek hero Heracles must ascertain the location of the golden apples of the Hesperides, guarded by 3 maidens. We say they symbolize Atma, Buddhi, and Manas. Now, only Nereus, the shape-shifting sea god, knows of their location. So Heracles enters the water, grabs a hold of Nereus, and despite Nereus undergoing many transformations, he eventually gives in and informs Heracles as to where these apples are. So what does this mean symbolically? Well, I would relate the symbolism of Nereus to what Patanjali referred to as chitta, or mind stuff. The yoga teachings inform us of how the mind is in a continual state of agitation. It ceaselessly adopts the forms and colours of everything presented to it, whether by the senses, our imagination, our emotions, our memory. And it's very challenging, of course, when we try to focus on a single thought. Almost immediately there's a flood of thoughts, as the mind is constantly in movement. And of course, this is a metaphor employed by the Buddhists of the chattering monkey, the monkey jumping from one branch to another, the monkey mind. And the activity of the lower mind deafens us to the voice of the higher self. As HPB states in The Voice of the Silence, the mind is the slayer of the real. Let the disciple slay the slayer. For when to himself his form appears unreal, as do on waking all forms he sees in dreams, when he has ceased to hear the many, he may discern the one, the inner sound which kills the outer. Then only, not till then, shall he forsake the region of Asat, the false, to come unto the realm of Sat, the true. The Advaita Vedanta teachings often employ the analogy of a pond being rippled by the wind to illustrate the machinations of the mind and its fascination with the objects of the external world. And when the symbolic wind is causing ripples in the water, one can only see broken images of the objects surrounding the pond. However, if the mind is stilled, the image surrounding the pond can be perceived in its entirety. We can then both perceive and reflect the light of the spiritual planes of consciousness, the golden apples of the Hesperides and the Heracles myth. So I said at the beginning, in terms of the way of the monad, within the realm of the goddess, that the goddess jealously guards her secrets. And if we are to access these by undergoing the higher initiations, penetrating her veil, then we must overcome what is commonly referred to as the devouring aspect of the feminine. Here is an image of the Hindu Kali, standing upon the supine form of her consort Shiva. Now, in outlining the archetypal functions of Kali, the Indologist Heinrich Zimmer states, it might be said that the goddess represents clearly enough by a feminine nature the life-bearing, life-nourishing maternal principle, this her positive aspect. But the counterbalancing negative aspect, her ever-destructive function, takes back and swallows again the creatures brought forth. To this end she is represented as Kali, the black one. Kali, that is the feminine of the word Kala, meaning time, the all-producing, all-annihilating principle in the outflow of which everything that comes into being again vanishes after the brief expiration of its allotted life. And of course, this is an ongoing process. However, when we realize our essential divinity and function as an instrument of the soul, these effects are negated. Here is an image of Medusa, the Greek version of Kali. The hero Perseus must decapitate her and bring the head back to King Polydectes. To gaze directly upon the countenance of Medusa turns one to stone. This is symbolic of the most terrifying, most challenging aspects of the journey of the monad within the realm of the goddess. And when we tread the path, we must confront the most terrifying aspects within our own psyche, but also the various or apparent horrors going on in the outer world, such as it forms, everything eats everything else, basically. You know, and all the various horrors we see, the wars and so on, all caused, of course, by issues within the human psyche. The Jungian analyst Erich Neumann describes the archetypal goddess as the Great Mother, and he emphasizes that she possesses a devouring aspect. He refers to this as the terrible mother, which he associates with Medusa. And he states, the petrifying gaze of Medusa belongs to the province of the great goddess, for to be rigid is to be dead. This effect of the terrible stands in opposition to the mobility of the life stream that flows in all organic life. It is a psychic expression for petrification and sclerosis. The Gorgon is the counterpart of the life womb. She is the womb of death or the night sun. We must flow with the intent of the soul. That is what astrology is about, flowing with the rhythms of the cosmos, not for personal ends, but as an aspect, a cell within the divine physiology. We must render ourselves oblivious to the effects of the symbolic Medusa or Kali by functioning as a spiritual instrument, realizing our immortality. Athena is the warrior goddess and the feminine personification of wisdom. She is the Greek goddess who assists many of the heroes, giving them wise counsel and patronage, helping them to fulfill the requirements of the quest. Now, she is symbolic of the fact that whilst we are very much tested in our long evolutionary journey by the archetypal goddess, we are also assisted and inspired simultaneously. As HPB states, help nature and work on with her, and nature will regard thee as one of her creators and make obeisance. And she will open wide before thee the portals of our secret chambers, lay bare before thy gaze the treasures hidden in the very depths of her pure virgin bosom. Unsullied by the hand of matter, she shows her treasures only to the eye of spirit, the eye which never closes, the eye for which there is no veil in all her kingdoms. Perseus overcomes Medusa through a polished shield. This symbolism is very important. In esoteric astrology, the axis between the opposing signs of Virgo and Pisces is extremely relevant here. Virgo rules mirrors, it rules purity, it rules viveka or discrimination, it rules self-analysis. It also relates to the virgin aspects, a purified psyche, giving birth to the Christ child within. And this is all required if we are to successfully utilize the energies of the unconscious, the Greek Hades, which is governed by the opposite sign of Pisces. HPB famously stated, anyone as having descended into Hades was equivalent in antiquity to calling him a full initiate. So this mirror symbolism is very important. A mirror enables us to see aspects of ourself we would not otherwise be able to perceive. On this basis, we can work towards separating the wheat from the chaff within our psyche. This is the Hindu Viveka. And to do this, as we work on our purification, we begin to obtain illumination from the planes which the soul inhabits. To do this, so the mirror of our mind, it must be resplendently clean. As HBB states, based on the esoteric doctrine of Bodhidharma, for mind is like a mirror, it gathers dust while it reflects. It needs the gentle breezes of soul wisdom to brush away the dust of our illusions. Seek, O beginner, to blend thy mind and soul. Tried and tested disciplines of the spiritual path. Wayne spoke about this golden flower, the secret of the golden flower this morning. And to obtain that secret, one must polish the mirror of the mind. Turning the light around, they call it, where the consciousness moves from the conscious mind to that of what they call the original mind. This is the self-same process. In the Perseus myth, when he decapitates Medusa, the winged horse Pegasus emerges. This represents the ability, after overcoming the darkest aspects of our journey within the realm of the goddess, including what Theosophy refers to as the dweller of the threshold, consciousness may ascend to the Olympian heights of Atma, Buddhi and Manas. Interestingly, fascinatingly, when Pegasus strikes the earth with his hoof, the Pierian spring emerges. This is the spring of the aforementioned muses, a fountain of knowledge which inspires those who drink from it. Hesiod informs us that the muses were the daughters of Mnemosyne, meaning memory, and Zeus, the supreme Olympian, the monad. And born from memory, the muses, the energies of Atma, Buddhi and Manas, enable us to remember our transcendent origins. And the Pierian spring, the spring of the muses, Atma, Buddhi and Manas, serves to inspire all the great artists, poets, composers, seers, sages, true scientists, and so on. But this only occurs when we overcome all the challenges of treading the path, overcoming the dweller, overcoming Medusa, Kali, and so on. At a very advanced point of our evolutionary journey, we come to the interface between transcendence and manifestation. The penultimate verse in part 1 of The Voice of the Silence states, "And now rest 'neath the Bodhi tree, which is perfection of all knowledge. For know thou art the master of Samadhi, the state of faultless vision." Of course, this alludes to the story of Prince Siddhartha, who underwent various disciplines, encountered many teachers before arriving at the Bodhi tree, vowing not to move from the meditation posture he has adopted until he has attained enlightenment. The demon Mara, get the same thing here, seeks to deflect him from his purpose. He sends his 3 beautiful daughters to seduce him. He sends a hideous army of demons to confront him before assailing the prince himself. However, on each occasion, Siddhartha's powers of concentration prove too strong. He attains enlightenment, becoming the Buddha. But he renounces nirvana, rather he stays behind to help humanity. Of course, this is very illustrative of the spiritual path and the work of the initiates and masters of Theosophy. Now, Siddhartha is seated at the Bodhi tree, the interface between transcendence and manifestation. Joseph Campbell describes this as the world navel, which he states is ubiquitous, both within and without, one may say, in that enlightenment occurs within and can take place at any point on our planet. Important to bear in mind. And we can relate this immovable spot, or world navel, to the interface between the logoic and monadic planes, to HPB's Veil of Isis, as Campbell said, the spot where Kali dances. And if we can successfully tread the spiritual path, functioning as an instrument of the soul, through undertaking the tried and tested disciplines advised by the Theosophical writings, we may reach this interface between transcendence and manifestation, and as Campbell states, release the flow of life into the body of the world. I'm going to conclude with what I feel is the best summation, of what lies beyond the veil. Obviously, I can't describe this. I haven't been there. I'm sure anyone who does experiences, they will experience initially imagery in accordance with their own psyche, but we are basically describing something here beyond name and form. However, I feel this is probably the best summation of this from HPB. Behold, thou hast become the light, thou hast become the sound, thou art thy master and thy God. Thou art thyself, the object of thy search, the voice unbroken that resounds throughout eternities, exempt from change, from sin exempt, the seven sounds in one, the voice of the silence. Thank you.